So it's now my very great pleasure to introduce our guest speaker for this evening. Professor Jane Den Hollander, AO, you know a fair bit about Jane, I'm sure, was Vice-Chancellor of Deakin between 2010 and 2019 and was interim Vice-Chancellor here between March and July. And you'll remember that was the most panicky time of COVID, and Jane was just marvellous, and her work was very much appreciated by so many of us. Jane received an Order of Australia for her distinguished service to tertiary education in 2017, and then in 2018 she was awarded the Business Higher Education Roundtable Ashley Goldsworthy Medal for Individual Leadership, and in 2019 was named in the Victorian Honour Roll for Women. And then in 2020 she received the Australian Financial Review's 2020 Higher Education Lifetime Achievement Award. That is pretty impressive. Since she's been back in Perth, she continues to be busy. She's the chair of the Centre for Stories, which is located in the city, director of Breakthrough Victoria, director Lions Eye Institute, director of the WA Public Health Authority, and director of Navitas in Perth. So we're really delighted to have her in a busy life. And what she's going to talk on is up here, so I won't really repeat it to you. So over to you, Jane. Thank you.
Thank you. I acknowledge Vice-Chancellor Professor Amit Chakma and our Warden of Convocation Emeritus Professor Dr. Jenny Gregory, AM. And of course I acknowledge that we meet here on the lands of the Noongar people of Western Australia. I pay respects to elders past, present and emerging, and I note that in the history of this continent, land has never been ceded by the original peoples of this land. Thank you to members of Convocation for inviting me to speak this evening. I acknowledge my former colleagues, UWA staff who are in the room. I also note this momentous day in Australian history. Listening to the Prime Minister this morning announcing the process and the referendum question which will enable our Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander peoples to be formally and finally recognised at the top of our Constitution was an uplifting and emotional moment. Our PM said, if not now, when? I think there is hope on the horizon that we will one day be one nation. As a consequence of that, I've changed my talk slightly. Rather than go to the doom of climate change and our predictions, I think there's more we can talk about. It's an honour for me to be amongst you. I'm not a graduate of this fine establishment, but I have worked as a staff member in 2 tranches of employment under Professor Fay Gale, the first woman Vice-Chancellor in Australia and a great leader of this university, and a woman who particularly supported women like me, a scientist, a migrant, new to a country where no one really cared what you did. And I also note Professor Alan Robson, who was the Deputy Vice-Chancellor at the time, who was supportive and essentially gave me the great opportunity that has led to the very lovely career I have had in my 25 odd years in Australia. My second term of employment at UWA was more recent, and many of you know about that. I retired from Deakin. I promised Jerome, my husband, a UWA graduate, and our 2 children, UWA graduates, that we would spend the whole year travelling. And of course the pandemic descended and we were stuck in Perth and our children were overseas. The Chancellor, Robert French, phoned me and said, don't worry, Jane, a few weeks, that's all it will take, and then we'll have our new Vice-Chancellor, Amit Chakma, with me. I thought, well, what's 3 or 4 weeks? 6 months later. And now I am a member of the UWA Senate. So I'm predisposed to this great place, which is of such significance to so many in our community. And in thinking what to say, I reflect that when I started working as a graduate demonstrated Wits University in South Africa, I recall that we, the students, were not permitted to speak to the head of department, in my case, God Professor Boris Belinsky, a Russian, for anyone who knew, who could write on a blackboard with his back towards you with both hands at the same time. I was genuinely terrified of him. But here we are today, 50 years later. Mostly everything is different. Universities, the most successful and enduring institutions of our 20th century, are no longer have the monopoly on creating and sharing knowledge. Bill Gates at Microsoft, Steve Jobs at Apple were innovators in the true sense of the word and found their time. They changed the way we work and how we communicate. The iPhone, you will all remember that famous picture on that stage in San Francisco. First released in 2007, turbocharged the change, most specifically for us in academia and the global family of universities. I think we were hit first and we benefited most. Our intense global connectivity, internet analytics and new media has in the blink of an eye reshaped our global higher education sector, including how universities are viewed, how they are used, how they are valued, and above all, how they are trusted. This has meant universities globally have had to adjust relatively quickly to being transparent about selection. Who would have thought that was important? Reporting on diversity and how it is improving. Recording how they manage quality assurance and what is being done about the retention of students. Graduate employment outcomes are now a key measure of institutional access here and at every other place in the world, I think. A significant benchmark of quality and reputation, and they are a topic, retention of our students, a topic of discussion in the corridors of power and influence. And in a nod to our mothers, the generation that made sure their daughters were educated, so that today there are now more women enrolled in Australian universities than ever before, steadily becoming the majority in many places. This is a good thing, my friends, and Australia's future looks bright as it increasingly is a very well-educated population. Soon, most of us will be graduates. Alongside this, however, our community has become less enamoured as the cost of education for their children and indeed for themselves has spiralled. Our research topics are sometimes subject to derision. There's even been the occasional interference in funding decisions by those who have power. Discomforting events as the academy confronts opinion, which often counts more than facts and evidence. In our relatively new post-truth world, expertise and evidence are now frequently disregarded. Alternative facts, fake news compete on an equal footing with peer-reviewed journals and authoritative sources. And to our collective chagrin, these are often more highly cited and believed than our research. As the late Stephen Hawking said in a message recorded just before his death 2 years ago, and I quote, "We are witnessing the global revolt against experts." All of this, I think, is understandable as we have watched the impact of digitization and a globally connected economy on almost every aspect of all of our lives. Our democracies are having the odd difficult moment, we would have to agree, exacerbated by the great moral challenges of climate change, the impact of violence, most particularly the violence against women, and the most significant movement of displaced people in our history. Education systems globally are not immune, and these issues must be front and centre to our purpose, those who believe in this place. International Monetary Fund Managing Director Christine Lagarde put it this way, and I quote, "All countries need to reinvent their education systems for the digital age. And this is not just adding a few more coding lessons. It's about fostering the critical thinking, independent problem solving, and the lifelong learning that can help people adapt to change." And she emphasized those 3 words, adapt to change. It is about investment in human capital. She could have been talking about the strategy of many universities. And so where to from here for this institution, known globally, owned possessively and proudly by its citizens and its graduates? It's my view that Western Australia needs at least one strong, genuinely global university to match the power and focus of those others around the world. We must be part of those big conversations. To underline this, the questions I am most frequently asked since I've returned to WA are two. Are there too many universities in Western Australia? And if so, the second question, what should we do about mergers? This has led to discussions that UWA is too small, that Curtin is too big, that some UWA should be bigger, that ECU should be the capital of Joondalup. Merger talks canvass many ideas, the most recent being, as many of you would know, the proposal for one West Australian university system similar to the California system that many of you would have been in or would be familiar with. Bigness, in my view, and I've given it quite a bit of thought, is certainly a worthy question. But size and scale only matter when it is clear what it is that you actually want to do, how you intend to get there, and to have at least some possibility of providing something better than that which already exists today. Otherwise, take care what you mess with. These discussions, however, are not unique to us. They occur all over the country. I recall my early days as Vice-Chancellor based at the headquarters in Geelong, a manufacturing city, the heartland of Victoria, had two going concerns in 2010 in that city, which was laid waste by the global economy, and almost every manufacturing enterprise that was in the region closed down. The two certainties in Geelong were the football club and the university. Famously, I was asked at a similar public meeting, I was advised that the oldest football club in the country needed a university it could be proud of. I took the point, and I see that same expectation here in Western Australia. There is a town that wants to be proud of its university, and I think it mostly is. Western Australia can certainly afford to support a higher ranked university than it currently has. Bouncing around the top 100 mark, while commendable, is sometimes fraught with tension, as there is always the chance of falling out of that venerable club. It's my view, therefore, before we chase rankings by merging all or some of West Australia's universities, clear thought is needed as to why we would do this and how it would advantage our students and our community. Equally as important, consideration should be given to addressing the fallout and consequences of the pandemic on our next generation of learners, particularly our current students, our future students, and for those students whose first 3 years of education in this place were completely disrupted. There was no orientation day. There was no, and if you forgive the term, sex, drugs and rock and roll that we all experienced. They don't particularly now come or see the need to come to campus, as they mostly work and study to afford their fees, with no optimism, as one said to me the other day, of ever being debt-free. Fun has certainly been in low supply in the 20s. Understandably, students are more critical than I recall. I think that's a good thing. They want their curricula to have real-time world relevance, measured in terms of their skill development, more important today than discipline knowledge, which will only be useful if you know how, where and when to apply it. And as one said to me, and you know there's always Google. Google is now a close and reliable friend of our students. How UWA moves collectively then to provide a smart, future-focused contemporary experience that is better than its competitors is the challenge. It will take partnership with each part of the university doing its bit to ensure progress and fitness for purpose, at least by 2050. The role of convocation in assisting, supporting and promoting this future excellence of this place is vital. Many institutions are not so fortunate to have all of you, a body of dedicated, knowledgeable people who actually do care about the future of your alma mater. I would hold on to it fiercely. And so, my friends, I end by reflecting that this year was 50 years since the first photograph of the blue marble, planet Earth, taken by a human who left the planet, went into space and turned around and took that wonderful photograph. If you haven't seen it, Google blue marble and you will be amazed. Many of you will have seen it, however. I still recall it as amongst the most significant moments in our planet's history that will eventually be seen as the starting point of human expansion in the universe. Time will tell, as it always does, if that is true. But for now, I remind you that it was university-educated people who were at the heart of enabling every aspect of ensuring that first photograph of a man in space photographing the place he lived was taken and then safely returning to terra firma. Without universities, it would never have happened. It is interesting to reflect on how much has occurred since then, and to be proud of the continuing role that universities have played since that day in the pursuit of knowledge of our universe. One thing has remained constant, however, in all of our lifetimes. I'm disappointed in this. We appear to be a unique, intelligent life form on one small blue planet in an insignificant galaxy in a vast solar system whose size and scale is almost impossible to comprehend, and which takes our breath away whenever we look up into the sky. This uniqueness means that we should treat our planet gently. There appears at this stage, although the probability would be against me, that there is no other intelligent life form. Therefore, we must treat our planet gently in the hope that we will endure. And we should definitely treat each other gently. We are, when all is said and done, all that we all have. Thank you for listening, and thank you for the invitation.
Well, thank you very much indeed, Jane, for your presentation this evening, which was full of interesting thoughts and insight. So thank you. And I've just got a little gift that I will bring out for you. Just a small thing to say thank you.
I'd have been disappointed. This university tradition is...
Now,